stutter. I also found it very hard to grasp words, reading and stuff.
Yeah.
The guy stood up in the top of the class, we're on lunch break, and he says, I have Eddie Kelleher's copybook here, and read it out. And it was horrible, I'll never forget one night, my mum came to collect us, and I remember going in, and she said, oh, what? You were smoking, she says, right? I said, no, I wasn't. You were smoking. Get into that car, you're going home. When I went to Denmark, right, it was like a complete bombshell to me because I lived in a small village in Riverstake, and next thing I was up in Colding, up on top of Jutland, up on top of Denmark.
Would you say you were ready? Welcome to Getting There with Amy Claire. Eddie,
Thank you.
would you like to introduce yourself so the listeners can just know a little bit about you first before we kind of delve into the whole story?
Okay, my name is Eddie. I'm from Cork, born and raised in Cork. I live in Riverstick, a small little village close to Kinsale, and I'm married to Mag, and I have 4 in family, and they range from an age of 20 to 30. So there's a big gap there, So, I was born on a farm, and as a young boy growing up or whatever, I worked with my mum and my brothers and sisters. I have 4 siblings, and we grew up in the farm, and I went to the school national school in Ballymartle.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, just down.
I think my mother went there as well.
You did, she did. Your mum went there as well, absolutely. Yeah, and it was a bit kind of a lovely little national school, and it catered with baby infants up to 6th class.
Yeah.
Before we went to our community school, or as we call it back then, secondary school.
Yeah.
Do you know,
Do they call it high school here now?
They don't call it. It's
secondary,
secondary, community school.
Because obviously in the States they're big into high school, and so I
It is.
because here it was secondary when I was.
That's right. That's right. Then I was like, as you went to Balgoley school.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, so that was after Ballymartle school. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was lovely. Look, it was a country school, and we all, it was a lovely place to grow up.
Yeah.
And in the Riverstick, and and go to school in the national school, we call it. So I suppose when I was starting off, I went to school about 5 or 6 years of age. I was, it wasn't, to go to school much younger, like 4 or 5, but I was kind of think 5.5, 6, I think, before I went to school. So it was, yeah.
You must come back on now for another episode. We'll do school systems.
That's what we'll do, yeah. That's what we'll do, yeah. So yeah, I went to school. I was up to 6th class, and when I was in school, the national school wasn't so bad because it was different. Our teachers were kind of very kind of laid back, and you had to do your bits and pieces, homework and stuff like that. But I never really kind of grasped school as a young person.
This actually goes perfectly into the first event.
Yeah.
That kind of you mentioned that kind of shaped you to how you kind of became you. And that is, you mentioned it when you're in school, you had a stutter and you had dyslexia.
Correct.
So can you just kind of tell me a little bit about that environment for you? How was that? What kind of age were you at when this kind of was at its...
Well, when I went to school first, you go into baby infants and senior infants on the way up or whatever. I think when I kind of hit first class, second class, I had a stutter and speaking and stuff like that. But I also found it very hard to grasp words, reading and stuff.
Yeah.
And I found that difficult because I wanted to grasp it, but I couldn't grasp it. I wanted to, why was I like this or whatever. So my mum then, I got elocution lessons, to get rid of the stutter and stuff, and that helped greatly. And I went along to school, but unfortunately in school, if you didn't get it, you were kind of left behind a bit. And I always remember 4th, 5th and 6th class, there was like 3 lines, so 4th, 5th and 6th, but I think we were segregated a small little bit. So when we didn't get it, we were falling behind, we were kind of left behind as well. it's not like today, like there's more help in national schools with young people with dyslexia, with dyslexia and other, children suffer with autism. They have one-to-one, they have more help and stuff. We didn't have that in our day. So going through national school, it was happy times, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it, but the school part of it, the learning and stuff, I found it difficult. And I felt quite behind in. So when I came sixth class or whatever, the community schools and the convent was in Kinsale as well. They came out and they kind of looked for numbers to come to their school. So I was quite good with my hands mechanically and stuff like that, right? And I said I go to the tech so I could learn a trade. Even though I was farming at home and I loved farming, but farming wouldn't have been always my first passion. So I remember going to the community school in Kinsale.
Yeah.
And Denny Paul Griffin was our principal there. And I remember we going into this room. It was the mechanical drawing room. And all my friends from national school, and especially the guys who had stayed behind, I won't say we were forgotten, we were left behind. We were kind of sitting as good friends, in this room, and other members of the class as well. But I remember we did this kind of an entrance exam, and straight away I was in trouble there because reading and writing I struggled with.
Did you know that it was like dyslexia?
No.
At the time?
I didn't know it was dyslexia at the time, no.
So can I ask, like, for, yourself, a boy at school who's struggling, what did you think it was? How did you kind of view yourself in that situation, or what did you kind of think was going on?
Well, back in those days, fair play to my parents, they did the best they could to help me along, and my sisters as well, and my brother was much younger than me, so he's 5 years younger. So that time they tried to get you help or whatever, but it wasn't available, right? So the name calling, right? Like you friends or whatever, and there was some nasty names being called, even like towards the end of sixth class, going to first year. Like you call it Dumpsy D, you were called, you know what I mean? Names that really kind of stuck and really hurt it, right? So when I was in first year, I remember doing this entrance exam, and it didn't go very well. But it was X and Y's, so we were putting the Y's in the Y's group, and the X's we called them the experts, and we were the Y's guys. Do you get me?
Oh, wow.
So we're kind of segregated out, which I thought was a bit, it was a bit unfair as well.
No, I mean, it's just the terminology.
Yeah.
I've obviously never heard that.
Never heard that one. It wasn't a take.
Yeah. The X and Y. So you're saying that wasn't like a casual thing. That was a formal thing.
It was a formal thing. It was a formal back in the day, yeah. And your X and Y's, whatever. But into the first year, whatever, I was very lucky. I had a lovely teacher in there. He is the woodwork teacher and mechanical drawing. He was a Tuller. What's his name again? Tuller, and there was John Welch as well, and they took myself and my friends Tommy and Dempsey and a few more of us aside, and they said, lads, you're struggling here with your reading and writing and stuff. So I said, we can help you. So I said, this is great. So I remember they take us into this room, and they said, sit down, lads, and they asked us to read a book and to start off. So to be honest, Amy, right, I was actually reading Ladybird books at first, in my first year in school. So after a while, I grasped how to read and how to write, and when I got it, I absolutely loved it, right?
Fair play to you.
I got it, I loved it, but I suppose I was probably, I remember it being the first year and the first 6 months into it. I remember friends who were in school, being national school. I remember one day they opened my sack and they went through my books and they took up stuff that I had written. And it was spelling was wrong or whatever. But I remember this particular guy stood up in the top of the class. We're on lunch break, and he says, I have Eddie Kelleher's copybook here. I read it out. And it was horrible, the stuff that he, whatever. So I remember saying that time, I'm giving up school. I don't want to be here no more. And I remember going home in very early stages of first year. I told my mother and father, I don't want to go to school no more. I have enough of it or whatever.
Yeah.
I'll give you guys a help here on the farm. And they said, no, you have to keep going and whatever. So
And what age, at this point, when you thought, you were like, I think I'm done with school? When
I'm done with school. I was, 14, 15,
Okay, yeah.
thereabouts,
Yeah.
that kind of a bracket.
So I'm sure, because there could be some listeners listening to this going, actually, I'm going through something similar.
Yeah.
We obviously mentioned there about how nowadays there's a bit kind of awareness of things like dyslexia and stuff like that. When did you find out officially that it was dyslexia?
To be honest, it wasn't in school, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't kind of recognised back then.
Yeah.
Dyslexia wasn't recognised back then. I left school after getting back to John Tulare now and John Welch, those two teachers. I'll always remember them for what they did for me and my friends.
Yeah.
They taught us how to read.
Yeah, they took their time.
They did,
Yeah.
Then I had other qualities then in woodwork and metalwork. I could make anything,
Very creative.
So I always say to people who have a disability like dyslexia, whatever, or autism, whatever, is to make that a positive. Don't lie down with it. But going back, when I hit that low part after that incident in school, say, and there's a few more incidents like that,
Yeah.
I remember going to a very, very low place, and I just had enough or whatever. And I would say to any, I got so low at that time, I wish I wasn't even there.
Yeah.
So I would say to anybody, to any bully out there, the people being bullied, don't take it, guys. There's plenty of help out there.
Yeah.
And face up to your bullies. Don't be a bit afraid if someone is down on you or whatever. Don't be a bit afraid to speak back. It might be hard at the time, but do speak to somebody or get advice or whatever. And I'll never forget, I talked to my father about this or whatever, and he says, give him a dig.
Yeah.
That was his way of dealing
Yeah.
with it, which is the right thing to do. So anyway, as time went on, went through school, I got better or whatever, and I improved in my reading, and I was actually very good at maths then, and mechanical drawing. So I think people with dyslexia have a quality. They have they're better with their hands, maybe at making stuff, understanding mechanical drawings and stuff like that. And I did have that, and that was a positive. And then I got into the motorbikes in school.
Ooh.
Yeah,
For
I got
anyone
into
listening,
so
You now have a Harley Davidson?
I have a Harley Davidson.
Nice.
You're right. Yeah, you're spot on.
Nice.
Yeah, Harley Davidson. Oh, and I always wanted one, and I said eventually, look, I'm getting older or whatever. I like it the younger, so I got a Harley Davidson. Oh, yeah.
Oh, fair play.
But I remember our friends that time. We all had bikes, and we started off with Honda 50s, 125s, then we went bigger or whatever. But we hung around together as friends. I always forget those guys in national school who struggled, and those guys who struggled in the community school. We became very close friends, and to this day we still are very close friends.
Did you find then that kind of bond over maybe a mutual understanding was the kind of cemented that friendship? Is that what kind of drew you together?
It was. That's what drew us together, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I think we struggled a bit in national school and we struggled a bit in secondary school. And, I think if I saw them being bullied or whatever, I'd back them up then, and they were vice versa.
See,
We
isn't
helped
that
each other.
fascinating?
We helped each other out, We were there for each other. Which
Yeah,
was good,
I see this a lot actually, and I almost kind of even I can empathise with that in the sense of, and I'm sure lots of people can. Isn't it amazing how when it's for someone else you wouldn't,
True. True.
think a second thought.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's ourselves. And how have you come along in terms of your confidence now? You're a great speaker. I mean, there's going to be listeners here that perhaps aren't aware of your kind of experience and what you've done, but like Eddie's been absolutely phenomenal in representing youth club, Cork,
Thank you.
local village. So your communication skills, I mean, from hearing this first kind of part of your story, you wouldn't think it. And I suppose there's another message in here with that, right?
Yeah, most definitely.
When did you when was the point then that you felt that your confidence started to kind of get better? You found that your communication skills started blossoming, and how did you kind of go about that?
Well, when I left school, after my inter cert, I didn't do my leaving cert. The reason being because my parents they fell ill on the farm.
Okay.
So I fell back onto the farm, then helping my mum and dad, with the cows and the animals and stuff. But I remember my sister Mary, she says, Eddie, I don't think this is for you. I think you need to be doing something else. And I remember my sister and Catherine as well, and I think Dolan as well, they said, look Ed, why don't you, there was a scholarship to go to Denmark. So I did the interview and I got the scholarship to go to Denmark. Now it had to do with agriculture, right? But when I got that scholarship, I said, Jesus, this is great. I got it, and there was a lot applied for it, right? I think there was about 70 applied. I think there's about 8 of us got the scholarship
Wow.
to go to Denmark back in 1987. And when I went to Denmark, right, it was like a complete bombshell to me because I lived in a small village in Riverstake, and next thing I was up in Colding, up on top of Jutland, up on top of Denmark, and the population was quite big, and it was a culture shock. I can tell you that now.
Going from Riverside to Denmark.
It was, and I remember the first
only
week,
imagine.
10 days over there, I said, oh my God, what am I doing here,
Yeah.
And the language barrier and everything else. But
Oh, of course, right, yeah.
yeah, but the family I stayed with over there, and they were lovely, and I really enjoyed it. But the friends I was very close to at home, I just wanted them to do the same as I did. Lads, travel, because they all left school early, took on trades, back farming, carpentry, construction, whatever. Those guys never travelled, and I said, lads, I used to ring them up and I said, lads, you'll have to travel, I think that was the first time I got a bit of confidence in my own self, and I love meeting people then, When I was in Denmark, I was, communication skills got better because you were on your own, even though you met the 7 others I travelled with once a month. It was just amazing. I just loved it, and I found in that I got the skill to speak to people and stuff like that. So when I came back then after 6 months, I came back. I met my lovely wife Mag. Okay, I had met her before I went, but when I came back, we started dating and going out and stuff like that, and after 4 years dating, whatever, we tied the knot and we had our first child, Jerome, and then we have 4 now in family. Jerome is the oldest. Darren is the second oldest, and Ella, my daughter, she's the only girl I have. She's third, and Luke then is the baby. We call him, no matter how young we are in the family, you'll always be the baby. You know.
My little sister knows that, and she gets away with it as well. You see,
It gets away with murder, absolutely, yeah.
That actually is one of the events you chose as well. Was bring a family, marrying Mags. So, can you tell me a little bit about how you met Mags, and then maybe the kind of influence in your life of having that kind of partnership first of all, even before kids?
Yeah.
And then we'll move on to that.
Well, we met Mags, and she was nursing at the time, and we used to meet. Like, we had a great time back then. And looking back, we had 3 places in Kinsale that we could go out.
Oh, really?
Okay, there was 3. We call them nightclubs.
Yeah.
And in West Cork, we had Bandon, we had 2 in Bandon, we had the Rugby Club, we had Inniskeen. We had a great choice of places to go. Clonakilty, I think you call it the Boiler Room now, when you were going there, I think.
Yeah.
Was it Boiler Room?
Yeah.
It was Industrial Hall.
Throwback and
Industrial Hall was the time when we were going there. So we had great, and there's great live bands back in the day. Like Joe Dolan would be, I like Joe Dolan now, he's dead now, God rest him, whatever, but we had a lot of good live bands. Gina J. Hayes and the Champions. Live music was brilliant.
Did you meet Mags at one of these events?
I tell you now, I met Mags. I see her at one of these events, and I remember looking at Mags, and I said, do you know what? She's the girl for me,
See, I think now, this is where I could go off on a whole hour on this. There's, obviously in today's world with dating, there's still a lot of kind of traditional methods that people meet and other people on apps and stuff like that. Some, you could ask a lot of guys today of all different ages, probably particularly in their 20s and 30s, that are single, and they'd probably say like there's this kind of fear in terms of going for it. So for you,
Yeah.
you obviously experienced a kind of period of low confidence in your youth, and then you explain kind of how you got that confidence. You've just said now that you kind of just knew. How did you then approach it? Did you just go for it, basically?
Well, basically, right. I see Mag, and I never knew who she was from Adam, right?
Right.
She just saw her in the dance hall, and I said, that's the girl I would like to be with. But I remember one or two of my friends asked her for a dance.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. It's
Okay.
getting interesting now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Oh, whatever. So one dance, and they were gone. Okay. And I remember I asked Mag for a dance, and I got two dances. So I said, maybe I may have a chance.
So it's buy one, get one free.
It was something like that. No.
How old were you both in this time?
I think I think we were around 20. Mags was 20, I was 21, 22.
Okay.
They're about, sorry, my apologies, yeah. Was it, yeah. 19, between 19 and 21.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
thereabouts.
So when you obviously then you eventually got together and you had your 4 lovely children,
Yeah.
what was it like for you in terms of when you first became a father? How did that kind of impact your life and your mindset, how you approach life and stuff like that?
Well, yeah. Jerome was our first, right?
Yeah.
And, it was like throwing it deep into the pool.
Right.
Right.
Would you say you were ready?
No, because Jerome was our first. Jerome
Yeah.
was our first, and we were expecting before we ever got married.
Okay.
Okay, so back in those days, trying to break the news to the parents and stuff like that wasn't easy. So we're saying, so Mags went to London for a small bit, and I was going to follow her over. That was the plan. So anyway, we decided between myself and Mag, and that we're probably better off coming home, building our life here in Ireland. So we did that. So Mags continued to work as a nurse in Ireland. She came home and we got married. And we had Jerome was our first. I mean, we rented a little cottage over in Riverstake. And it was lovely. When Jerome came along, it was like your whole perspective on life changes.
This is what they say.
Whole, everything, no matter what you think yourself, no matter what you're involved in sport, I wasn't very sporty, but other things like the bikes, cars and stuff like that all went to one side. Like, we now have a son and a young baby. That's priority, and it was absolutely amazing when he came along, and we lived over in our little cottage, and we didn't have much, income was small, and you kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel or whatever, but we had amazing families and we had amazing friends. And it was a very, very happy time in my life, and Mag's as well, I would say, So then we built our own home, and I took over the family farm. My mum and dad, we had a mixed farm, so I took over the family business. My parents stayed on the business. They had their own. My mother was very industrial, my dad was. They had a pig unit, so they stayed on that section of it, and I took over the dairy side and the beef industry side of it. So Mags continued to work as a nurse as well. So I built our home, and so along came then the second baby, Darren, which was amazing. Then we had Ellen and Luke. So we built our home, and life went on. My dad was amazing. My mum was amazing. Mag's mum and dad were fabulous. All our siblings, brothers and sisters, they were all great with the babysitting, stuff like that,
Did you find, because obviously there's millions and millions of people who are in different family dynamics having children. Did you find that having the kind of larger family supporting you, what were the kind of, did you find it overwhelming having so many in terms of, I know that might sound mad to say like a big support system, but some people say that.
It's very important.
And then other people say that they needed that. And as I say, some people, they don't have that big support system, but then others will get overwhelmed with it, right? Because you've got all these different people, giving you different advice and stuff like that. So can you tell me about, obviously, as your family kind of grew, and you obviously had a big kind of support system around that as well, how did you kind of like as the family grew, basically, how did you find your kind of perspective again on life kind of changed, or
It did.
even thinking about your own childhood
Yeah.
through your own children? Like, can you just tell me a bit about that? I'm just really intrigued.
Yeah, I suppose when Riverside and Ballymarf would be big J neck of the woods, right? And I remember Jerome playing the hurling, and he was good at it, right? But what I found out in J, right, there can be politics, right? You know, a guy shows up for training, he's expected to get a game or whatever. But sometimes there may be too many.
Right.
And I found that Jerome, I'll forget one night I was in Balgoley at a match and Jerome was sidelined for a full final. Even though Ballymartle lost heavy, he was still sidelined. And I remember him coming home in the car crying.
How old was he at this?
Jerome would have been, I suppose, Jerome would have been around 14,
Yeah. It's a really
13, 14, 15.
big time for peer development and stuff like that.
It is, it is. And I never see a young fella's confidence knocked so much, you know.
How did you feel about that, seeing that?
It took me back to when I was in school, you know, your confidence being knocked
Yeah.
low, whatever. And I could feel his pain.
Yeah.
I could really feel his pain. And I said to Jerome, don't worry about it. And the granddad was there, go back out again, you'll be fine. But I do think that's in sport, you know, you take your knocks, and if you're really into it, you go back into it. But he got involved in different hobbies, tug of war. He loved messing around with machinery and stuff like that. But then he came along, he joined Feroga, right? Now, I take Feroga as a youth club, which we have in Riverstake.
Yeah,
You were
I
on
was
it,
there
you
for
were,
years, yeah.
absolutely. So going back, how I got involved with Feroga that was probably the trigger of it, right? And I remember back to the time when I joined a youth club in Riverstake.
Oh, yourself, is it?
Yes.
As a leader or as a member?
No, as a member, when I was in, I'd say, second year in school,
Yeah.
probably 16, I think I was around 16, we joined 15, 16, we joined Amacna Tua, which is now Feroga, right? Started off Amacna Tua. And I always remember going on a Saturday night for 2 hours with all our friends, meet up, have a meeting first, have a cup of tea afterwards, then we go do our own thing, play games, soccer, volleyball or whatever. Orienteering was a big thing back in our day, you know what I mean? So that was, back in the day when I was struggling in school, I found that place a safe place for me growing up. I had 2 hours on a Saturday night with my friends, and that was our time, and we used to have a ball. And I made a lot of friends from that as well, from youth club. So I think I said to Jerome then, would you join? And he said he would. So he went to Feroga up in the hall, and I think Pat Scanlon was running at that time, and Carol Coleman, and
It actually cracks me up. It's a very Irish thing
it is
to remember the names and mention the names.
Yeah.
I've done a few of these podcasts before,
Right.
and I find it such a Irish quirk to mention the names. I think it's quite lovely in a way that you remember everyone.
I remember everyone. I do absolutely. Yeah.
The fact that you remember each of the names, it's even doing these conversations.
Yeah.
It kind of makes me think. Sometimes I think, is it a generation thing? Is it an Irish thing? A combination of both? But that was a bit of a side note.
Yeah.
But no, I'm just noticing that, and it's kind of making me giggle in the nicest way, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you actually got Jerome to join the youth club, was it?
He was there, right, and I could see Jerome was going to try his hat at Hurley at this stage, because I'd say he wanted to show his granddad how good he was in the field, and my granddad, my father, was at that match, and I think it broke his heart. That's because my dad used showed Jerome out the whole early, how to hit the ball, that kind of way. Yeah. But anyway, he did, and like Jerome wasn't going to school that time himself, and he was quite, he was quite intelligent, quite smart, but he joined the youth club in Riverstake, Feroga, with his friends, and he absolutely loved it, right? So I remember this night, I said, that's brilliant, that's, it was like a map of myself, he took a bit of a knock on his life, and now he was joining the youth club as well, right? So I remember I got a phone call one night from the leaders in Feroga, asked would I give a handout. And I said, yeah, even though I was quite busy, I said, yeah, I'll give a handout, no problem at all. There was, I remember, remember you used to go to discos?
Oh yeah.
Discos back in, you used to go to different club discos, and you fill the bus, no problem. There was, and so I fell in, I did a couple of helped them out on a few occasions, and I absolutely was blown away when I saw the setup they had. It hadn't changed in my lifetime from Machna to it to where it was. The meeting beforehand, discussing the plans, what you're going to do for the summer or for the next couple of months.
It hadn't changed, you said.
It hadn't changed really, no.
Did you like that?
I loved it. I
You liked the
absolutely.
fact
It
that
was
it-
simple. It was young people meeting up for the 2 hours in the community hall, and what I loved about the one in Riverside was a lot of young people went to different schools. They were in Kinsale, they were in Bandon, they were in Cork, so they went from national school into different schools, and they were kind of the only way the outlet was meeting them was through JAA or doing sport, but not everybody's sporty, everybody. So there was a place for everybody. There was room for everyone in the youth club. So I remember going to that, and it was just to see the young people enjoying themselves, and it brought me back to the time when I had my in Machna Tua, the enjoyment I got from that.
That brings us perfectly into the other event that you briefly mentioned about, but I don't know too much about, which is great. Which is you joining the youth club yourself, which
Yes.
you briefly mentioned there, but the positive effects. Can we delve into that a little bit more? So, in terms of the positive effects on you
Yeah.
of joining the youth club, what were those?
Positive effects was that there is somebody out there who cares, an older person that cares about your well-being or whatever, right? And you could confide in them, you could talk to them or whatever. But what the conference did for me was just seeing the different things you could do, volunteering or whatever, teach us even to do that. Remember going to discos, with the youth club as well. First time going to a disco, meeting girls or whatever. You were shy lads back in the day. But
I think a lot of lads, even now, I know we mentioned
Yeah.
this kind of slightly before, but there's a lot of guys out there.
very shy.
I think they have even the ones that would seem confident amongst their peers, right?
Yeah.
I think when it comes to dating and stuff like that, or even just not even dating itself, but approaching women, there's a lot of fear out there. So was this the kind of first encounter for you where you're kind of I'm not quite a boy anymore now, when suddenly there's girls, there's women, and how was that for you?
It was you try to go out there and you try to be be the cool dude, much as you could or whatever. Be the man, and you got a few dances, discos, they were well supervised and everything else. And I'll never forget actually Tommy, one of the lads, it happened back in school actually. I remember having my first cigarette.
Really?
My first fag, whatever. And we would be killed, my mother and father would kill me if they ever caught me smoking. And you could never really talk to them about it as well. Even though my dad did smoke, but he gave them up over years. But I remember having our first cigarette was a big deal.
See, because the whole health implications of that wasn't really out and about too much back then, was it? Did they kind of had in terms of I'm trying to think of the symbol of the cigarette then, because you mentioned that you were it was a big deal.
It was a big deal.
So whereas now I think having a cigarette, because there's obviously a lot kind of towards the health kind of side of
That's
things.
so true, yeah.
Back then, I'm learning this as well from other people
Yeah.
in your generation. It was kind of seen as the symbol.
True.
Is that correct?
That would be right, yes.
And it was a symbol of what status of being cool?
Being cool.
Yeah.
If you're not, you have your cigarettes or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember in Frog at that time, there was a couple of us smoking,
Yeah.
and we kind of formed our own little club within a club. Not a club within a club, but so much we're going to sneak up for a fag here in a minute, that kind of way. I'll never forget one night my mum came to collect us.
Okay.
And
Oh, we're getting the juice now.
yeah, the mum collected us or whatever. And was go outside the hall, which was our old church converted, and there's a big tree, huge tree, you could hide behind the tree. And I remember my mother drove in, and there's only one door going into the youth club, and she drove right up to the door, and we were not supposed to be out of the hall. I said, how am I going to get back in here now, right?
Okay.
So I remember
There's a group of
crunching.
you.
Sorry?
There's a group of you.
There's a group of us outside,
Oh, yeah.
smoking, which we shouldn't have been, right? We
How old
sneaked
were
out.
you?
Was I 15?
Okay, yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
That kind of probably 15, 14, 15 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember going in and she said, oh, where'd you come on? You were smoking, she says, right? I said, no, I wasn't. You were smoking. Get into that car, you're going home. But yeah, it was like, that was, and even having our first drink. I remember having our first drink or whatever. I was much older. I was actually 18, 19 before I had my first drink, and just even to get a bit tipsy or a bit drunk or whatever, that was an experience of its own. Like I suppose I was lucky in the fact that I had good friends. We could support each other, watch out for each other.
Yeah.
And we were all kind of there for each other, whatever. But I feel today, getting back today, speaking to young people, and there's so much out there now. Look, I use the word drugs, right? Like, as a person says to me, what's your medicine? You're like, is it drink, fags, or is it cocaine or whatever? So I do worry about that as an older person now. As I'm a granddad as well. I have two small kids. I worry for those going forward. There's so much out there, and there's so much. I'm very good to speak to young people, and I ask them, their experiences about going to house parties, and they tell me straight up, yeah, it's available, and if you're not in the clique, sometimes there's peer pressure to try an experiment. Try a bit of hash, try a bit of cocaine, try something.
Were you someone, when you were growing up, did you find it difficult to not give in to peer pressure? Were you those people that, because obviously when you're younger anyway,
Yeah,
it's naturally
true.
going to be more
That's
difficult.
true, yeah.
But everyone's still different. Some people, you can see they're like, no. They're still kind of able to kind of resist that. And others, depending on their experiences, their background, everything, find it really difficult to just say no.
Yeah, that's true.
Did you, growing up, in terms of, obviously there was a status thing as well, so it's a bit different.
Yeah.
But how did you handle the peer pressure when you were like a young lad?
Yeah, I suppose, look, like that, the fags came, whatever. I like the fag,
Yeah.
right? I like to smoke, whatever. And I used to enjoy, the few drinks as well. And going out going out for a disco or whatever. I just enjoyed. I think the drink, what I found with the drink was it gave me more confidence, right? Even though I wouldn't have been confident enough, but it gave me that extra bit of confidence,
Right.
if you know what I'm saying.
I think a lot of people will relate to that.
I think a lot of people would relate to that. And I really just enjoyed a cigarette. Now, as time gone by, I was a different smoker. I would call me a weekend smoker.
Right.
Because,
a weekend
yeah,
smoker.
because
Okay.
I wasn't smoking in front of my parents.
Right.
And what I found, like, we know phones back in it. We know we
yeah.
know phones. There's landline, a letter.
Yeah.
I remember like sending me letters. And
Get
I
on horseback and travel.
Oh yeah,
No.
absolutely, yeah. But it was I suppose, like, we kind of Max was working away. She had her friends, I had my friends. We caught up maybe 3 times in a week, whatever. But I always found, like, with a drink or whatever, we go socialising. It was good fun, and I love to sing as well, whatever. So I actually love music as a child growing up.
Do you play any instruments?
I play a tin whistle.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I play it naturally. I don't have to read it from a book or anything.
Yeah.
I tried the guitar. I must try to do the guitar now at some stage. I made a couple of attempts, but my hands are too big, I think, for the strings. But where am I going with this? Yeah, just so I think there's a lot of peer pressure out there at the moment, and I've seen that over time in youth clubs and stuff. Not so much youth club, but
I think it's in general society.
it is in general
But
society.
it's always been there.
It's always been there.
But I
Yes.
think the approach to it, or how the kind of conversation around it, is just that's what's kind of transitioned.
That's so true.
So, because I hear a lot about this as well with a range of different subjects, like, back in my day we didn't have this, we did, but actually the more conversations I have with people, or the more books I delve into around these kind of different topics, the more I realize that actually, even though our environment is very different, the same kind of concepts, the same kind of barriers were there. It's just the approach to them are different. That's
so
just my own, obviously my own opinion on that. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things like, oh, we didn't have to worry about this back then. But actually just having this conversation with you, even about, you know, the struggles that you faced, it's becoming clearer and clearer. Like, no, we actually, there's a lot of similar struggles today and back then. It's just the conversation around it was very different.
It was very different, yeah.
So...
I think we're going forward in a positive way. People are speaking more about it now, whatever, and people speak more about their mental health, and they speak more about where they are and how they feel about, you know, which is very, very important. And even the LGBT community or whatever, like go back in our day, that was taboo subject. Mental health was a taboo subject.
You were very passionate about mental health, aren't you?
I'm very passionate about mental health. I suppose, moving on from my childhood, I had a good childhood.
Yeah.
I had a bit, going to school was the bullying and stuff. I didn't like that part of my life. And I loved my friends. I loved my motorbike. I had a horse as well. I loved my horse. my parents, my mum and dad, Tom and Eileen, they were just so good to me as well. They were always there to support me no matter how much trouble I got into.
Yeah.
You know, I was like on the motorbike, caught a few times for no insurance, speeding or whatever. And along that time, the guard would come to the door and he says, you know, your son was doing A, B, and C. But the guard was common sense in the guards as well. They give you a warning. No, it's a prosecution, if you know what I'm saying. The local guard Longo was great if you were in trouble. Some misdemeanours, as I would call them, they come to the house and they talk to you and they talk to the parents as a warning. You know, don't do it again. And you listened. Do you know, that kind of way? But mental health for me,
Why is it so important to you?
Why is it important to me? I had a lovely, beautiful first cousin, and Jor, and I have no problem mentioning his name. When we were married, he used to come to our house and he suffered from depression.
Right.
And my Mag was she was very creative, and she did discourse acupuncture. And I remember her working with Jor. Acupuncture, as you know, is getting needles in certain parts of the body to help you to relax. And so Jor, and he often stayed with us if he was in a very bad place. And I remember my uncle ringing me one day. He says, Ed, Jor is in the hospital and he's going to commit suicide. He made an attempt to commit suicide. So I said, Jesus, how, like, you know, he was a guy who had everything, right? But he didn't have, his head wasn't right, and he suffered from depression. Very intelligent guy, and when he lost his life to suicide, that was the turning point for me, you know. So I said to myself, oh my God, what a beautiful life gone. Because he was such adorable man, and he kept encouraging everybody else around him. And he was just an amazing guy. And for that to happen to him was horrendous. And I'll never forget his funeral. Like, suicide was a taboo subject, mental health was a taboo, you know. And I remember parts of that funeral. Getting back, can I go back a little bit before that?
Yeah, go for it.
I remember in the community, when Jerome was, I think, in third year in Kinsale Community School, there was a lad in his class lost his life through suicide. And over a relationship, right? I remember going to that funeral and see all the students lined up outside the funeral home and see this young person come out. And to see all the teachers there, and I knew the mother and father as well. It was heartbreaking to see.
Did it bring back those kind of memories, I suppose, for your...
Cousin Jory, it did.
I can only imagine.
And next thing, I see, and it was the lads were very upset, and there was no supports back then for a student. Look, there was a bit of counselling or whatever, but I don't think there was proper supports in place, you know. Whereas I see today in the community school, especially Kinsale Community School, like, we're very lucky. I'll go back into KISS, which is a mental health group in Kinsale, but there is one-to-one there. There is Honor O'Brien, as you remember.
Yeah,
She was a chaplain, was it a chaplain or?
she was really, really good support system for me when I was kind of struggling at school at one point as well. So yeah, she was. Yeah, I think.
She was a beautiful person.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, you know, in terms of it's definitely, I can see you're so passionate about like the topic and stuff. Do you feel a lot more confident nowadays in the support that's there for people?
I do. I really do. I go back. Look, we go back to the boom. I call them the boom kids.
The boom
right,
kids.
boom kids.
Yeah.
When boom was there,
Yeah.
when Ireland was thought they were doing very, very well, and the building was flying. There's loads of money around. Banks are dishing out money. I see lads getting big wages, and come Monday, their wages were gone.
Right.
And that's when I think this drug kind of thing came into play or whatever. And during the boom times, I lost a lovely neighbour of mine, Dave. He was a gorgeous guy and big wave, Eddie Hawaii and all the rest. And he lost his life through suicide.
Okay.
And I said, oh my God, here we go again,
Yeah.
Then there was an episode in Riverstick in Ballymartle of suicides, and I said, oh my God, something has to be done. What's gone wrong?
Yeah.
So I'll never forget James O'Mahony, who was a Garda liaison officer.
Garda is police for any of the non-Irish listeners listening.
Yes.
I'm going to do a little.
Yeah,
I'm going to have a little
okay.
dictionary up in this podcast when it goes
Right.
out for everyone,
Please,
because I think it's
yeah.
great to have people to kind of understand the different kind of terms and stuff.
So Garda liaison officer actually work with people under the age of 18 years of age
Yeah.
if they get into trouble with the law.
Yeah.
And they're there for supports. But he was an outstanding guy. I remember he phoned me and he said, Eddie, we're going to have a meeting in Kinsale, and we're going to discuss the topics of young people losing their lives and mental health in our community. And I remember going into Acton's Hotel, and there was a group in there. Honor O'Brien was there, Dr. Hines was there was James O'Mahony, there was there was Pat, there was a great mix of people. And I remember going in there, and I knew most of them, right? And we sit down, and like what we're doing here now, we start speaking about our community.
Yeah.
And start speaking about mental health. And to write down our ideas or whatever. So as time went by, James asked me would I come on board to be, to help to promote positive mental health.
Yeah.
And I said I would, I'd love to. And I remember going to our first meeting, our first Kinsale Youth Support Service meeting, right? So they asked me to come along because I was involved in youth that time.
In case people are confused at this stage, Eddie was one of the youth leaders in the youth club I also joined.
Just electric.
Can I ask, as we kind of approach towards the end of the podcast, you're kind of clearly very proud of a lot of different people and groups.
Yes.
What are you most proud of yourself?
Of myself. What I'm proud of myself, right, to coming from where I was in school to where I am now. I've got a lovely wife, Mag. I got fantastic kids. I got 2 lovely grandchildren, which I adore to bits. And I really, my mum and dad, my dad passed away in 2010, miss him to bits. And that time I struggled.
Yeah.
And I struggled when I lost my dad very badly.
Yeah.
To a point where I went for counselling myself.
Okay.
To get me over grieving. I didn't understand grieving.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't
think a
understand.
lot of people don't,
A lot of people don't understand grieving.
because it's different for everyone, right?
It's different for everyone.
Yeah.
But it's a mental health, it affects your mental health. I was tired. I was going sluggish at work. I wasn't no mood for meeting people and stuff. And even though I promote mental health a lot, right, I was slow myself to get help. And I don't know why, because I just bottled up when my dad died. But Mags organised me to meet Jason, a counsellor. And when I come home one morning after work, and Jason was in the kitchen, and I cried for a full hour. Just cried.
And is it that moment of going to counselling that is that proud moment for you looking back, or is it where you've come from and to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. It was because I helped so many people on the way, and I gave guidance. I promoted positive mental health.
Yeah.
the work I did with young people, I hope, like, it's great. You're down the street and you meet guys and girls and they say, hey Eddie, how you doing? Even to this day. People who came through the club, you know, young people came through the club, and if I could help any of them on the way, I did. Helping KISS to promote positive mental health. I'm very proud of that.
Fair play to you.
The people I helped. People I've helped on the way who struggled, look back and I'm very proud of that. And I'm very proud of myself to come and to reach out and speak as well, you know, and to promote it and to help people. Because I have a great understanding of people. I feel their pain.
Yeah.
If I'm talking to somebody who is in trouble, I said, look guys, just somebody there if you want to speak to someone, you know. And they come to me and they confide in me as well. I don't speak.
Very trustworthy.
Trustworthy. I don't speak about anybody's issues, whatever. So yeah, I built my own business and I ran the farm and I followed my passion afterwards. Now my son is running the farm. I started my own business in planting machinery, something I was always very passionate about anyway. And now I got a chance to do that. And I'm very proud of myself to coming all the way through my own life and to achieve where I got today. But I always love to give back. You know, I love to share stuff with people that I love, and that's the bottom line.
Well, that's so lovely, and I'm very proud of you as well. I said.
Thank you very much. And
this goes into the last closing kind of question I'm going to be asking everyone that comes on this podcast. I want you to picture yourself in 10 years, okay? And that in 10 years, Eddie's there sitting next to you. What do you think he'd say to you now?
Who's this?
Eddie in 10 years. Yourself
10
in 10
years,
years.
10 years time?
Yeah, yourself in 10 years' time. If he was here now, okay?
Okay.
What do you think in 10 years, what do you think the advice that yourself in 10 years would give you now, basically?
Give me now. So, it's not a trick question, right?
It's not a trick question. It's something that I thought about myself.
Okay.
And I found it really interesting. Okay. And when I ask lots of people, it really gets them thinking. And there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just really curious.
I'm curious. I will give you one example on this. Years ago, shortly after my dad passed away, I had a very bad accident on a horse. And I thought I wasn't going to make it, right? So I looked back at my life then, and I said, you know what? I lived a good life. So look, if 10 years from now, I'd be much older or whatever, I've said to myself, Eddie, I hope you're wrong no one in life, that you helped as many people you did in your life. And at your last few, you know, at the end of your time, that you look back and I lived a bit of life, I had fun. And I would say that to everybody, just live life. Have a bit of fun. Fun is so important, no matter what it is. No matter if it's swimming, whatever it is. Going to comedy clubs, singing or whatever. Just make the most of life. Life is so precious, guys. And I do love life to nothing. And I just love getting involved with different projects. And the friends I have today are absolutely amazing. And we're even moving on from the friends I had then, right? We've other friends now. I think friends give support for each other. And I've got an amazing bunch of friends to this day. And we all go, no matter what you do in life, none of us are perfect. None of our marriages are perfect. And if I have a tough time, I could speak to my friend or whatever, and they speak first and first to me. And we grow up together and we share, we have no secrets. Yeah. We can meet these, I have a handful. If you count your friends in one hand, you're made.
I've heard that a lot.
If you count your friends in one hand, you are made for life.
No, listen,
true friends.
Your story's been very, very kind of inspiring, I think as well. I've known you for many years, but even having this conversation I've learned a lot that I didn't know. And that was kind of the whole kind of purpose around this podcast as well, is to kind of encourage those to have these kind of conversations, but understand that we're all kind of just getting there, which is why the podcast was made anyway. I really want to thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank
you very much. And thank you. You're so kind to ask me. I was very honoured.
No, it's my pleasure, my honour. But yes, thank you so much for sharing your story, being so vulnerable with that. A lot of people are going to be able to relate to that, be inspired by that. And I wish you all the best going forward.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me.